Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles!
Hey everyone, Xander's here. I'm just a little bit different today. I'm going to be talking about a video game, and instead of, doing a Let's Play of it, I'm going to do a First Impressions video. So I'm just going to play game footage and tell you my opinion on a game. So today's game is actually the newly released Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutants in Manhattan. I got it for the PS4, so that's what you're going to be seeing is PS4 footage. And I'm just going to talk about, pros, cons, what I liked, what I didn't like, and my overall opinion. So, yeah, without further ado, let's dive right in. So first of all, I want to dive into the characters, mainly the turtles themselves. I like what they've done with the art design of the game overall, but the turtle designs, I think, are really well done. Now, the character models in this game are more or less based on the IDW Comics line that's currently going on right now. And you can see the inspiration there, if not the direct lift from the IDW Comics with characters. But I do like it. It's distinct enough from past iterations that it's its own little thing. And I do appreciate the way they went about it. If you look at the turtles themselves, you can see variations in the design, whether it be from the skin tone, from kind of a pale green to the dark, vibrant green, height differences, even the masks, which are still, just the regular band design. They have slight variations in the way they're cut, or the way they sit, or even thickness level from forehead to snout. Another thing is they do have somewhat of a nose in this design. And unlike the first Bay-produced TMNT movie from a couple years ago, the noses aren't overly pronounced. They're there, and they're noticeable, but they fit. So I'm not disturbed by them having noses by any means as I was with the last movie they did. So I do appreciate what they did with this. They made them unique, not just personality, but design, so it's easy for them to stand out. I like the look of all the villains that have appeared so far. I've not completed the game as of this recording. I've done a majority of it, and the footage you're seeing is mostly from the first couple of stages. So you're not going to get too much, and I'm going to do my best to avoid spoilers as much as possible as far as what I know of the storyline. But overall, I do like what they went about with the designs for Shredder, the Foot, with the different bad guys like Bebop and Rocksteady. Even some fan-favorite villains from past games and toys and stuff like that made their way into this game. So I appreciate what Platinum Games did as far as their choice in villains and their choice in design work. So aside from just the looks, the sound of the characters is also well done. I think for the most part, the voices all pretty well match their designs. I think the only one that doesn't really match it for me too much is Splinter, but that's more from a design standpoint than the voice standpoint. I like the voice, but I feel the design of Splinter was a little off in the face. He looks more like a chipmunk than a rat. Rats tend to have longer snouts, longer noses, and stuff like that. This one just seems like someone's pet hamster, almost. It just kind of doesn't fit the character that well, I think. But overall, it's not a bad design. I'm not complaining about too much there. Speaking of sound, the music in the game is actually pretty solid as well. I do enjoy listening to the music in the background. It's not intrusive, but it's not like, a masterpiece kind of soundtrack by any means. But it fits the scenes. It does what it needs to do to get across the excitement, the action, and the things going wrong moments, I guess. Overall, it's not the most memorable soundtrack, but it doesn't intrude on the game or overstep what it needs to do. It's serviceable, and sometimes that's really all you ask for, especially in, a hack-and-slash game like this one. Keeping up with the pros, there are certain elements to the game that I enjoy that weren't really implemented in past games. There was a little bit of this in Out of the Shadows, which was a terrible game, in my opinion. I do like how they went about the characters. Each of the turtles can each hold a charm, depending on the level of difficulty you're doing in the game. For the story mode, you can have them holding a charm or up to 3 charms, which are your equipable items. in this game. Kind of like if you had like armor pieces and stuff like that. That's what this serves as. And they give different stat boosts or status effects, such as one I got for Michelangelo during my playthrough, as of right now. Not only raises his attack a little bit, but it allows him to freeze opponents on occasion. So he can be attacking an enemy and they will freeze in place. And I think that's pretty interesting. There's ones that allow you to actually steal HP from an opponent you're fighting, doing damage. You can gain some of the HP for yourself and heal a little bit. So I like that. Things that increase strength or increase item drop rates and stuff like that. So it adds a nice little extra kind of pseudo RPG layer to it without it being, again, overly intrusive. I like the fact that you can customize their special movesets. Each turtle gets 4 slots that are connected to the different face buttons. Basically, you hold down the left trigger, and then you can choose, like for the PlayStation 4, triangle, square, X, or circle, and each one has its own specific move. And you can upgrade and change those out and customize it for each turtle. So you can have your entire team out, and each of them have a different point to them. One could be more for close range fighting, another could be more of your support and healing if you need them to be, while still doing, protecting of themselves with good assault moves. You can have area of effect attacks. You can have just things that focus on what's right in front of you. It really all depends on your personal style of play, but I think it does hold up well in kind of giving this game its own identity a bit, for a Turtles game at least. So I appreciate how they go about doing it. I like that whether you're collecting items or like these little green orbs that exist within the world that you just collect stuff that randomly give you items, but they give you training points, and you use the training points you accumulate either from winning fights or completing missions and stuff like that to upgrade your weapon, your attacks. The other thing you do with these training points is you use them to purchase items that, whether you get them out in the wild or not from these orbs, you can go to the sewers and talk to Splinter at different points during play, and you can actually get up to 4 items that are assigned to the direction, to the D-pad, and you can use them for healing or for offensive items like freeze grenades, gravity bombs, turrets. Somehow the turtles can carry turrets in their little belt pouches, I guess. I don't know, it's kind of weird, but again, it's kind of arcadey. I can take it that way. I have no problem with it. I'm not going to argue logic in a game about giant mutant ninja turtles, Outside of that, I don't know if I really like the fact that the training points are used for both item purchasing and for raising the level and acquiring your attacks, or your special abilities, I mean. So I wish that had been separate a little bit. I could have an in-game currency, like Turtle Bucks or something like that, or something to that effect that kind of separates it, so you're not having to decide between upgrading your special abilities or buying an item in the middle of a fight or in the middle of a mission. So I mean, it feels like that's something that could have been divided between 2 different things, your trading points, and then like a monetary currency. But again, that's a nitpick, I guess, but it does kind of have an effect on gameplay a little bit. So moving on, let's talk a little bit more about the game itself. The way the game works is on a stage mechanic. There are 9 stages in all, each with their own boss. You will pick out the turtle you want to start the level as, and you can switch during the game as you play between all 4 of them. Before you do the levels, you can set the loadout, so what charms they hold, and as far as what their attacks are, their special attacks and abilities, prior to going in. You can also change the difficulty between easy, normal, and hard, and then you can unlock very hard later on. Depending on if you do hard or very hard, can actually add another level to of difficulty to the stage. For instance, from what I've heard, because I've only been doing on normal because I'm just trying to get through and see how the game plays, but on the harder difficulty, it actually adds extra bosses to a stage. So you can have one stage where you're fighting against Rocksteady, and Bebop will show up as part of the storyline. So there is some variation depending on what level of play you're doing, or your difficulty level. So there is a bit of replay value in that. So that's one thing. Again, each stage has its own kind of set location as well. One could be in the city streets, another one could be in the sewers, another one could be the inside of a building. It really depends on what the stage is, though there is some overlap. Sometimes it's the same area you were at before, like rooftops and that in the big city area, but it's just got a different weather effect going. So there's variation, but not a whole lot of variation. I mean, you're in the sewers a couple different times in the game, at least as far as I've gotten right now. So again, there's repeating stage sets, even if they shake it up just a little bit. Some of the stages even have environmental, I guess, attacks you can do. One of these stages takes place in the subway system, and you can actually use subway trains that are actively going throughout the stage as you play in certain portions of it, and you can knock enemies into them or lure them into getting hit by the trains, which will damage them. So that's something you can do to kind of use your environment to your advantage. Another thing I really like about the way the stage is set up as far as the environments is there's a lot of parkour going on. Now, I know what you're thinking, everything's parkour nowadays, but what works here is that it makes it to where the turtles' ninja abilities make them very malleable in how they handle things. For instance, you can be running around, you can jump onto a building, you kind of clasp on, and then you can jump off, you can climb up buildings. If you jump towards a light pole or just any kind of pole, you'll grab on and you'll actually spin around. So you can actually redirect your trajectory by spinning around a couple of times and get behind an enemy, or things like that, or just keep going rooftop to rooftop to rooftop, and you can find different parts to interact with, whether you're grinding on rails or on fences or hitting on poles and spinning around or climbing up a wall. You even get a kind of parachute that when you initiate a double jump and you hold X, or if you just jump once and hold X, a parachute would pop out, and depending on the weather effect, either just glide straight across, or if there's a big up current, as there is in one of the later levels, it can actually raise you higher up, and you can use that to traverse greater distances. So as far as just stage mechanics for maneuverability and interacting with the environment, there's a lot of interesting things like that. There are things to kind of hurt your run through, like there's going to be exploding barrels, there's going to be toxic waste that you can slip up in and slow down, and you have to, have somebody come over and wipe it off you, one of the other turtles. So I do like the way they were going with this. Even if it isn't perfect, I can see what they were trying to do, and it does function well for the most part. Now, since we're getting into the gameplay portion of this is where things kind of start to fall apart a bit for me. This game is single player, and I'm not really a fan of that. There is a multiplayer portion to the game, and it is co-op, but it's online only. You set up rooms, or you can go to other people's rooms or find a room at random, and either with friends or strangers, you can each take up one turtle and then go out and do the mission from the game, one of the 9 stages. What I don't like is that there's no local co-op. At the very least, it could have been 2 players, so you can each have a turtle on screen at the time that you're controlling and just kind of switch between them as you go, as far as the other available too. So you can actually create an interesting dynamic with a friend or your kids or whatever sitting with you, on the couch doing co-op. You could still do online multiplayer the same way with 2 people in one area and people from other areas. So you can still do a split screen, but they didn't do that here. It's all single player, so you can be any of the 4 turtles at any time. The problem is the other 3 will act on their own. You can give them orders to stay with you, follow you, wait, go all out, things like that. But more often than not, they'll just keep kind of charging in at the bad guys, and they'll keep getting beat up, and you have to keep reviving them. And we'll get to the revival system here in a minute. But as far as this gameplay aspect of it being you controlling 4 people, kind of, sort of, simultaneously, where you can just kind of switch with them into any of the other ones however many times you want, whenever you want, which is fine if it wasn't the only way to do it. I think that still would have worked good as a multiplayer local co-op instead of just a single player mode. I think that kind of limits what you're trying to do, because a lot of the times you're fighting against the AI, and they'll get stuck in between enemies, and they're taking hits, and you have to keep stopping what you're doing to go over and get them saved, or you have to wait through the whole revival process, and that can be really, really aggravating, especially during boss fights. The AI isn't exactly overly intelligent. Sometimes it'll work well, and sometimes it won't. I'm of two minds with the way they went about this. I would have been fine if it had just been you pick one turtle and then you just go through that level as that turtle. And then you could always switch out to one of the other ones once that turtle is knocked out. Kind of like they did in the old days. You know, back in my day when I was a young whippersnapper and I was playing on my NES. You know, you could do like you did in the arcade games and switch out to another turtle and continue and stuff like that. So I'm not completely sold on the way they did it, but I don't utterly hate it. It's kind of an in-between thing for me. Getting into the revival system now. Okay. During fights, you have your little health meter, which is represented by pizza slices. Because, of course, Ninja Turtles. What else you're going to have is your health bar. Once you reach down to almost nothing on your little pizza health bar thing, you'll completely withdraw into your shell. And at that point, the turtle cannot do anything but move around the stage, somehow on its back, and hop while still in the shell, hop around to get close to people so they can be revived, which means walking over and shoving a piece of pizza into the head hole of the shell, and all of a sudden you have health and you're back in the fight. And that's how it works for all of them. If you do not get to a turtle in time, or if you choose to, during the revival portion where you're stunned, I guess for lack of a better word, you're stunned out or shell-shocked or whatever they call it, you can hit, like in the PlayStation, the action button, which is circle. So you hit circle, and you'll fade down to the floor, back to the layer where you instigate a little pizza-eating mini-game, I guess is the best way I can describe it. Basically, you hit X repeatedly to shove pizza into your mouth and refill your health bar. If you do it too fast, it burns your mouth, you'll stop, and it'll take you longer because you have to cool your mouth down with a drink. But once you're done, you're right back into the action. So it's still a revive system beyond the revive system. The only way to lose is all four turtles get shell-shocked and then aren't revived and end up back in the lair. And the problem here is once all four turtles are there, automatic game over. The instant the last turtle has been knocked out and cannot revive, and there's no active turtle on the field, the game's over. And you have 3 continues from that point. Here's the problem with this. This mechanic works for multiplayer because, well, you're in charge of what's going on during the pizza eating portion of the revive mini game. Again, I don't know how to describe this, but you go in there and you eat the pizza and you're shoving it in your mouth, and you can get back out there as fast as possible before the rest of the team gets knocked out, which is fine. On single player, however, you have no control of what's going on during the pizza eating minigame, because the second the turtle you're playing as gets shell-shocked and ends up going back to the lair, you switch to another turtle. And you can't play as one of the other ones till they're revived and have eaten all the pizza and come back out. So you have no chance to affect that minigame. So it's going on in the background during the gameplay, and you're kind of stuck waiting for them to come back. And if you burn through all 4 turtles, the second they go down there, it's game over. So if they're taking forever to replenish and get back out, you have no control over it. You can't go and button mash them to go faster. You're stuck waiting. And I don't like that. I think for the single player, if they were going to do this weird pizza eating thing, that they should at least have had a time limit for you to go back after your final turtle has more or less fainted, I guess, or been beaten, and allowed you to at least instigate in the minigame and maybe even push the other turtles to eat a little faster, so it gives time for them to come back out. I just personally don't like it, the way they went. If it had just been a multiplayer-only kind of aspect, I'd have been fine. I could have seen the benefit of that, extending the gameplay a little longer, and not letting people just sit around doing nothing while the game goes on, while they just kind of wait to respawn. At least this way they're active and playing, even while knocked out. So I like it for the multiplayer, but for the single player, it's kind of useless, almost. Just let them go away, have them time out for a little bit, and then come back if that's how you want to set up your gameplay. That's fine. But don't make it to where there's a mini game going on in the background that you have no control of, and the second the last turtle gets knocked out, you have no control over it whatsoever, and the game just automatically ends, and you're going to have to use one of your continues. If you're going to have a continue system, at least let the minigame be playable during the single player. It just seems kind of unfair the way they went about it, and not a well thought out plan. Another problem I have with the fighting mechanics, dodging. Now, there is a dedicated dodge button. It's the right trigger in the basic control setup. And you do have the whole thing where you can time your dodges just right, and you'll go behind an enemy, and you can do a special thing where you climb up on top of them, making them bash their head and do a little damage while avoiding damage yourself. You can hold down the button and dodge a barrage of blasts or punches or what have you. And that's fine, but once you're hit, you're stuck in kind of a bounce back motion, kind of like Castlevania. You're hit, you get knocked back, and you're kind of stunned. You cannot go into a dodge if you're getting hit by a volley of blaster shots, and the first one hits you. You're taking the rest of them. Your dodge does not work. I don't like that. If I'm sitting like crap, okay, I got hit. That's my fault. And I'm sitting like, okay, well, I'm trying to do the dodge. Well, the second you're hit back enough, you're going to fall flat on your shell. Okay, so I get back up. Guess what? You already get hit the next volley. You're trying to stand up. You don't have time to dodge. The dodge doesn't just work automatically, even if you're hitting the button. If you're knocked down, it's going to take a second for you to get back up, and they can hit you and completely just lock you in a corner. So overall, I don't like the way the dodge function works on that front. I don't like the fact that they kind of have this stun section that goes on when you're hit. I don't like it. And the worst part of this is there is a negative effect to using the dodge mechanic. Essentially what goes on in the game is your turtle starts spinning like a top. He goes in a shell and kind of starts spinning around on his back or whatever to dodge. Or he'll like kind of phase in and out if he's in the middle of a jump. Kind of like, a ninja would, I guess. And the problem is there's a bar that shows up on the bottom of the screen while you're using the dodge mechanic. While you're doing that, it goes from blue to red. It'll shrink down. And if your bar runs out before you can let go of the button, you're going to be dizzy. Yes, you cannot just continually dodge as much as you want to avoid the onslaught of shit that can go on at the screen at the same time, from missiles to blaster fire to weird beams to just something come up and punching you in the face. You can't have like all this at once and then continue to dodge to try to avoid damage. No. You have to get dizzy, and then you're stuck there standing like an idiot with stars around your head like you're playing Street Fighter. And while that is, on Street Fighter worked fine for a fighting game, it does not work in a hack and slash kind of game like this. Because you're being punished for trying to do what the game's wanting you to do, and the only way to survive. I don't like that this bar quickly depletes. I mean, it does go away pretty quick. And sometimes you're getting hit by like 5 or 6 enemies surrounding you, and there's almost no way out of it. So I'm not really a fan of the way they did the dodge mechanic in this, really at all. It can work fine, but there are going to be times where you're fighting a boss, and he's going to get in the middle of an attack, and it's just a continual attack that takes up a lot of the stage room that you're given during these boss fights, and you've got no way to really get away from it for too long, and it'll keep going past the point where your bar would, end. So you're stuck stunned, or you're going to have to take the hit. So either way, you're getting hit. That's not a good dodge mechanic in my mind. So I think that's one of the areas that this falters as well. The difficulty for the game, even on the normal setting, is kind of shaky. There are times where a stage is pretty easy to beat, and it's kind of straightforward, and you can get through it pretty quick. But then there are times where the stages are just set up in a way to where you're going to fail a couple of the missions, because there's a set amount of missions that go on each stage, and there's like a progress bar at the top, and you complete each of these different missions to get closer to the final fight, to progress forward through like doors that are blocked by shielding or whatever, and basically it's an invisible wall, and you can't progress until you actually beat this certain little mini mission going on within the stage. And once you fill up the bar and you go through all the different missions and everything, you get to the final part, and you go and fight the boss. Some of the missions are on complete opposite ends of the stage map, which can be fucking annoying. You can have the missions be kind of the same thing back to back sometimes. One thing is disarming bombs. Another one is take these bombs that are going to go off for this alien tech and then move it to this certain spot. So yeah, you're still stopping something, a bomb or some kind of technology, and you have to either get it away from enemies who are shooting at you and you can't really dodge while you're moving the item, which is kind of common in these kind of missions, but it's annoying when you already have a kind of crap dodge mechanic anyway, on top of not being allowed to dodge while you're moving something. Or you're having to sit here in front of this bomb, holding the action button as you fill up a little circle bar on the screen. And so it's just a circle, and it starts filling up the meter all the way around. The more turtles that are actually actively working on the bomb, the faster it goes. Another variant of the bomb mechanic is one where you're trying to get these kind of antenna database things, and you're right there and you have to fill up the bar. One turtle at a time can only do it, and it takes forever. Meanwhile, you have these Foot Clan ninjas throwing bombs at your direction. One hit, you're stumbled. And now you've got to start almost over, depending on how far you were, and if you reach at least a partial checkpoint within this bar. If you fill up so much of it, it will never go below that point, but you still have to refill the part that you lost. And you have to go all around. You still have these things chucking bombs at you or coming up and throwing projectiles or punching you or shooting you. And it can get kind of annoying. There are even kamikaze units. Basically, every Mouser is a bomb in this game. Yes, the Mousers show up, and they walk towards you, and then they explode. I mean, they're one-hit enemies. It's whatever, but I mean, I remember fighting Mousers back in the older games, and they were more than just one hit. And they at least did something. They'll stop you, and they stop you in your tracks. They jump out, leap onto your hand, and you have to shake them off for a second. So, I mean, there was a better use of Mousers in past games than this one. Now, there's one thing I can say about the Foot Clan in this game is that there was a lot of variation with the different enemy types. You had ones that chucked bombs. You had ones that used, like, chains that they would kind of swirl around in their hands, and they would throw them, and the chains would wrap around you and stun you in place, and another turret would have to come and break it off. Again, it's kind of variation on the revive mechanic. But you could just get at a point. You could break it eventually, but it's better to have somebody come over and take them off. So I like that there was a great variation in the basic enemy types. But some of them just didn't work right. And then it just gets really shitty when you're in the middle of trying to do these little mini mission things. And the other turtles are supposed to be helping you, but they're too busy in the other part of the stage fighting something over there, and then something's just popping up around you while you're trying to work on this thing. So you're trying to stop and fill up this bar, and then here comes more. It gets kind of annoying at times. The pacing, I guess is what you can call this. The pacing of the stages sometimes can be really, really hectic and not very fluid, and it can cause frustration of the worst kind. Boss fights can be kind of a mix. Some can be kind of fun, and you're active, and you're climbing walls, and you're jumping around, you're dodging, you're using your attacks, and you're trying to strategically send some of your fallen turtles back to the lair to eat pizza while you have one of the more healthier ones out fighting, or at least avoiding taking damage as long as possible until the others come back. So there are some boss stages that are set up well, and then there are some that are just kind of annoying and just odd and don't really work well or flow well. And then, of course, you'll have your obligatory gauntlet of villains at some point in the game, which I've already gotten to, where I've fought like every other previous boss leading up to a boss fight at the end of it. And that's kind of to be expected at this point, but it's kind of like, do I really have to do this again? Kind of thing. And the stage is sometimes mimicking of the earlier stages, but not really. So, I don't know. There's also a level up system in this game, which I don't know how I feel about it. Basically, by playing in story mode or multiplayer, you have your profile that levels up. So it doesn't matter whose profile you're using, there's a different level for each person that plays the game. So my game profile will have a certain level, and then the other game profile that my kids have would have a separate one from mine. As you play through the game, you get ranked on the stages, and each mini-mission has rankings, which leads to the overall ranking for the stage and after the boss fight, and that will allot you points. And these experience points basically level you up. the higher level, the more special abilities you can get for the turtles. And it'll also allow you, at certain levels, to upgrade abilities you've already unlocked. Now, mind you, you don't automatically get these abilities. You still have to pay to acquire them. So you have to use the training points that you have been getting through the game to even acquire the stuff you've unlocked to use. So kind of, again, of two minds on this level up system. I don't know. There's also collectibles in the game, which is fine. I have no problem with collectibles. It's basically just comic covers from the IDW line, or older, I think, too. Even some of the earlier ones from the old Eastman and Laird comics a little bit. But they don't really do much as far as I know. I've collected several of them at this point, and I've not unlocked anything with it. I don't know if there's actually any unlockables in this. I know there's alternate costumes. There were 2 pre-order costume packs. If you got it from GameStop like I did, you got the rock and roll outfit, which you've been seeing in the game footage playing. And then there was another, if you order it from online or whatever, or like the PlayStation Store or stuff like that, it was a samurai armor pack, which is fine. I don't mind having alternate costumes. That's cool. I wish they did more with them, though. And I kind of wish they had stats that if you wore it, you got bonuses to strength or to dodge or something like that. Otherwise, they're just cool to look at. In fact, fun little fact, the rock and roll pack that you could get from GameStop is very reminiscent of the rock and roll in TMNT toy line they did back when I was a kid from the original run. Here's the image. So you can actually see a bit of Donnie, Leo, and Mike's costume inspiration coming from these toys. Raph, not so much, but then again, who would want the kind of weird Mick Jagger look he was going with this and that? I really have no idea what they were thinking with Raph, so I'm kind of happy they went with the more just tough kind of spikes on stuff for him. So that's just a fun little fact for you. Otherwise, they're kind of useless, and I don't know if there's more to unlock or if they're going to release more as paid DLC later. I would hope there's more stuff outside of just unlocking very hard difficulty in this game, so I don't know. Overall, though, the game is fine, but I was honestly expecting better from Platinum Games. I really was. This is by far not Out of the Shadows. This is nowhere near a horrible game, but it's pretty far from a great game. It's serviceable. So overall, I give this a cautionary recommendation. If you're a Turtles fan and you're just looking for kind of just mindless fun, I would say get this game, but I would wait till price drop. The game is only $50. I know only $50 isn't really an only kind of statement because that's still a lot of money. But at least it's not a full $60 price tag. Even at $10 cheaper, though, I can't really say it's worth getting for $50. At $30 or $40, maybe. $20 definitely would be worth it at that point. While you can go back and replay stages at different difficulties, and it does score you on each of the stages. Again, I don't know if there's any unlockables outside of just a higher difficulty, so replay value might be kind of pointless, really, to look at here. Why go back and play stages if nothing's going to change if you have nothing to unlock? I don't know. There could have been a better story, and the story's not bad. It's just not something overly special either. So while it has some good aspects, it also has some negative aspects, and just I can't give it a strong recommendation, and I'm not going to tell you to avoid it either. This is definitely something more for Turtle fans, especially older Turtle fans like me, or even some of the newer ones, as there are jokes to the old movies and to the cartoons, and just some in-jokes there that work fine. But overall, it's nothing groundbreaking. So if you're going to get it, wait a little bit for the price to drop. Once you get to about, like I said, $30 or $40, maybe consider it. If you can find it for cheaper than that, definitely go for it. It's a nice little, time sink to kind of just have fun with. But don't get it expecting multiplayer, couch co-op multiplayer. It's online only multiplayer, and even then, it can be kind of shaky as far as connection issues at times. I had an issue when I tried multiplayer with it taking forever to load back up once I got out of the little pizza eating mini game, and it took like 5 minutes almost for it to come back. And while there are other little issues like constant loading, there's a lot of loading that goes on in this game. Changing different screens gives you loading screens, things like that. So it's not the best experience ever, but not the worst. So kind of middle of the ground. I guess a 6 or 7 at best, if I had to give it an out of 10 score. But yeah. So thanks for joining me. This was a little bit different format than what I'm used to doing, but I wanted to give something out there for this game since there wasn't a lot of coverage over it, and I haven't been a lot of reviews out of it yet. And this was just, the personal opinion of an aging Turtles fan who has been playing the games since the Game Boy and the NES era. So that's just my take on it. If you've played the game, why don't you tell me what you think down below in the comments section. Also, why don't you go ahead and tell me your favorite Ninja Turtle, and don't forget to come back for the next video, hopefully here real soon. So, as always, my name is Xandros, and please remember, stay awesome. Till next time.
Nuked for our noshing nourishment.
About time.
Looks great, Mikey.
I'm starving.
So good. Thank you, my son.
I told you, perfection. I'm an artiste, the Michelangelo of pizza. Wait a minute.
Okay, guys, time to go. We've got bad guys to hunt.
But
You can have more pizza later, Mikey.
More? Father?
Wise man say, you snooze, you lose.
Man, I totally hate wise men.